So we'll go ahead and get started. So this week what we'll be talking about is depressive and bipolar disorders. And so we'll go over a little bit of background and epidemiology around that, and we'll discuss the specific criteria of depressive disorders as well as the course and the prognosis. You know, what does this disorder look like for people that live with depression? Similar with bipolar, we'll be going over the criteria for bipolar and the course and prognosis. We will briefly touch upon suicide risk. Going into that in great detail is beyond the scope of this lecture, but we will touch on that as well as then on etiology and treatment. So mood is different from emotion. So emotion is essentially a state of arousal based on subjective feelings. So mood is much more pervasive than that. So it's a pervasive and sustained emotional response that can colour perception. So sadness, for example, is universal. Depressed mood is not universal. And so people that meet criteria for depressive disorder are not just sad. They have this pervasive emotional response as well as other symptoms. So I think that's an important differentiation, is that we all experience sadness, we all experience anxiety from time to time, but when we meet these criteria for disorders, it's much more pervasive and is really impacting our function and relationships. And so depression is one of the leading causes of disability worldwide. So you can see here that this is proportion of total years in a lifetime lived with disability, and depression is higher than even vision disorders, dementia. So you begin to see how disabling it is to actually live with depression by looking at a table such as this. And so the lifetime risk for depression, for a depressive disorder, major depressive disorder, is around about 16%. And depression is more prevalent in females. And the lifetime risk for bipolar, combined 1 and 2, which we'll talk about that distinction here today, is around about 4%. And bipolar is one of those conditions that's relatively evenly distributed in terms of prevalence between males and females. There are no real race or urban, rural, SES distinctions for mood disorders in terms of epidemiology. But certainly I would argue that SES factors and urban versus rural certainly impacts access to treatment. So even though epidemiologically the research suggests that there's not significant differences, certainly it affects access to treatment factors.